All right, everyone, we start off today talking about the Biden administration once again getting blindsided, this time by, ostensibly one of its big allies, which is the National School Board Association. You'll remember this as the particular unionized group that had sent a letter to Biden and to Merrick Garland, of course, the AG. Now, you remember how Biden started insinuating, and the FBI and AG insinuating, that parents that went to school board meetings to protest CRT, to protest mask mandates, to air their grievances at school boards that clearly aren't doing their job, lower testing standards, everything under the sun. It's not a partisan issue. I would think that there's no disconnect, or at least not much disconnect, between the average liberal or Democrat party parent, their kid's in a public school, and their kid is in some way being ill-served, and one who's a partisan Republican or a conservative or a third-partyist or independent or something. My hope is that the average parent kind of cares about their child's education. Now, what happened is the NSBA hyperbolically overstated the threat to school board members and stuff, because we've had a couple of instances in which, because a lot of people get hot under the collar, and if you've ever gone to a school board meeting and you realize that it's like talking to a brick wall because most of the school board members are bureaucrats, they have nothing to do with the teaching, they handle money and bureaucracy, regulation. They're more like a disjointed, bumbling version of a miniaturized government. If you've ever gone to a school board meeting, as I have, you would understand this. Under that context, people get hot under the collar. You got 200 people in a room, 2 of them might get their questions answered, or people are sitting there for 4 or 5 hours. Naturally, sometimes emotions boil over. The NSBA hyperbolically looked at the situation and said, this is basically domestic terrorism because in a handful of events, we've had threats being made. Now, in the wake of the CRT expose that we've seen alone, we have had enormous numbers of parents showing up for, in many cases, the first time at school board meetings. If you have 1 in 1,000 cases where somebody has to be removed from the room because they're making threats or something like that, that is not domestic terrorism. The idea of weaponizing the AG and FBI to spy on these parents, harass them, to shut down school board meetings, go remote only and stuff, to try to stop people from speaking out, has really rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. So I'm going to get into this a little bit deeper, into the crux of this political situation and social situation, because, oh boy, is it bad for Beijing Biden. Now, first and foremost, before I do continue, keep in mind, if you're watching this video on YouTube, there will be a pinned comment down below with links to 4 other video hosting sites that I use. Keep in mind, I make 2 videos every day. They go on those sites. They don't go on YouTube. Now, here's the problem for Biden here. This letter was basically the template upon which he justified weaponizing Merrick Garland to go through the FBI to try to attack parents who are going to school board meetings. Now, they almost immediately walked it partially back and said, no, that's not what we're saying. We're just saying that in some of these cases there have been instances of things. It's not protest, it's harassment, or it's violence in some way. That is true. There has been violence and criminal threats at a handful of school board meetings. The problem is that the action taken, which was the weaponizing of the FBI under this particular premise, was based in part on a letter that has now been completely retracted and disavowed and explained away, and they said, oh, no, we were wrong to use the language, we regret sending the letter. Can you imagine the group that spoke out the most vociferously, that you used as the meaning to enact a policy that even some, I think, left-leaning individuals got nervous about, which is, hey, we're going to go into those school board meetings and be keeping an eye on them parents because parents shouldn't have a role in their kids' education. That's by the way, a really winning political message. Just ask Terry McAuliffe, who now actually has the possibility of losing at this point in Virginia's gubernatorial race. Now, that hyperbolic template has been scrapped. What remaining justification is there for your attempt? And it wasn't popular to begin with. Now that the NSBA itself comes out in the wake of a Free Beacon report actually to disavow its own letter, minus that hyperbole, it's going to be a hard time to explain, I think, to even Democrat Party partisans with kids in elementary schools or whatever, why you would continue to use that particular hyperbolic rhetoric against them. Biden almost immediately came out, and he's done this a number of times. social problem arises. And unlike Trump, who would do A/B testing, Biden immediately formulates a position, which is, by the way, a 180, a totally uncharacteristic trait for him when it comes to the campaign trail. I can explain briefly in a moment. He comes out immediately and makes a solid liberal position, even when any reasonable person would look at the situation and find that problematic. So he comes out essentially against the idea of parents being involved in their children's learning. McAuliffe, a Clinton cronyist and hatchet man, has done the same. It doesn't work very well, because it doesn't matter if the parent happens to be a liberal. They probably don't want to be told shut up. The American people are not very good at that under any circumstances, let alone in regards to their kids. I think that when parents are showing up at school board meetings, they are being civically minded. That's a good thing. We should be encouraging that behavior. It's nice that for a change, at least some proportion of parents are actually directly involved in their children's education. They always should have been. They always should have been at the PTA meetings. They always should have been at the school board meetings. Always should have been. I realize that not everyone always has the time to do that, but surely the once in a blue moon meetings that are really important that they hold, you can show up and you can certainly vote for the board members, insofar as that applies depending on where you are. I believe in most places. It's your civic duty. You should have been doing that all along. Now that parents are actually doing that, and it's opened their eyes, because a lot of them never went to a school board meeting before. A lot of them are uninterested in what their child learns. Millions of parents all of a sudden get red-pilled about communism light being taught in their schools. They go apeshit, they organize, they start overrunning the school boards, they start forcing out school board members that support this crap, they start embattling politicians who support CRT and wokeness and the sleazy, dumb reduction of testing standards, which is the opposite of what should be done. They're doing everything wrong. Parents finally realize that this over-bloated, over-federalized, extremely expensive education system isn't even educating, certainly not with regards to history, that it's dumbed down woke bullshit, and then Biden steps in to say, oh my God, they're basically domestic terrorists. Again, though, the justification, not that he wouldn't have wanted to do that anyway, the reports about parents being upset about critical race theory and the shystery horseshit that is, that predates the NSBA letter, just to be clear, by quite some time. But he needed an excuse in order to weigh in, and now the NSBA's excuse that they handed him, they've taken back. Boy, what a stunning rebuke of Biden's initial reaction. Well, these parents getting angry at them school board members, they're all a bunch of QAnoners. It sounded like a deplorables moment. And if you look at Biden's polling, I would wonder, I know that it's a measurable amount, I just wish that I could encapsulate the exact amount of his reduction since he stabilized post-Afghanistan that's the result of this. That's the result of him basically attacking parents. Even if you're a liberal, like, for any Democrats out there, and I know there are a handful of you that lurk on the channel, please tell me honestly, fucking just admit to it. You know that the optics of this aren't good. You can think that it was well-meaning and like you know, he's got to weigh in because there are extremists at the school board meetings. Okay. Do you think the way in which he framed it and the way which the NSBA, which it has now apologized for, that gives you the rhetorical indicator here, the way that they framed their hyperbolic summation of the situation as though there was a horde of evil, Trump-loving Nazi Q fanatics storming into every school board meeting and threatening to lynch people, which never happened, do you think that that was effective, or do you think that it was self-defeating? A really, really bad idea all around. Again, the proof is in the pudding. Look at the polling. Look at the continued reaction. And now look at the biggest and most vehement sponsor of the initial hyperbole itself, backing off completely, disavowing its own letter, and even expressing sadness and regret for having even sent the letter in the first place. Oh boy, by the way, this is going to make the circuit and embolden all of those that have been showing up at the school board meetings. I suggest that they do keep doing so, as long as they are being peaceable. Not criminal harassment, they're not assaulting people. They have the right to assemble there, to take part in that civic action, and not only do they have the right, they have the responsibility, because they have children in the public school system in many cases. You should show up at least to certain school board meetings. You don't have to show up like every week when they read the minutes or something. If there's anything important on the docket and there are ways you can find out sort of what the fuck's going on, you should do it. It's not taking, they schedule it around the average parental schedule. If you're a night janitor, maybe you can't tune in. I don't know, they can stream it remotely. They do that nowadays for everything anyway. Here's our janitorial meeting for Southwest County High School. 3 people show up. There's 5 people watching online who are really bored insomniacs. Show up and fucking query them on what's going on. Make it known. Critical race theory is bullshit. It's been debunked by every legitimate mind on the internet at this point, not only every legitimate academic, because it's literally repackaged Marxism. That's quite literally what it is. And parents should speak out against it. Yes, it should not be taught in schools, except in the concept of comparative history. So here's what this particular academic enclave dreamt up as bullshit in the mid-atomic period, and we can have a discussion about whether you think that it's valid or not. That's fine. That's comparative. Trying to teach that it's real, though, is definitely not properly serving the children. That's about all. Peace out.